and welcome back to the Retro Hunting Adventures. I'm your host, Mr. MegaManFan. This is going to end up being a two-part episode because I've got over a dozen Wii U games that I'm testing today as I inch ever closer to completing the Wii U collection, presuming, of course, that they don't release any new physical games in 2021 in the North American territory. That was my only goal, to collect all the ones released physically in either the United States, Canada, or perhaps Mexico, but mainly the US and Canada, which seemed to be the places that Wii U games were the most widely available and sold commercially. As for Japan, Australia, and the European territories, not worrying about those. I realize there are more Wii U games out there, but unless I were to mod my Wii U or buy a Wii U from one of those regions, those games would not work on my system. So I'm concentrating on physical releases for North America that work on a North American Wii U, which seems like a pretty reasonable standard to set when you're trying to make a complete set. Angry Birds Trilogy is surprisingly the less available of the two Angry Birds games for Wii U. I had no trouble getting Angry Birds Star Wars, but I had to keep an eye on eBay for quite a while to come up with Angry Birds Trilogy complete in the box with the manual and the disc and everything for a reasonable price. Honestly, you wouldn't expect it to be that hard for something from the Angry Birds franchise, but apparently they just didn't make that many for Wii U, so it ended up being more work than I expected. Now, Ben 10 Omniverse, I could have gotten locally at one point, but I passed up on it because it wasn't complete, and then I never saw it again. Like, I hit every store, I hit Trade Post, I hit Pop Culture, I hit Half Price, I hit Ben's. Nobody had Ben 10 complete. Well, I think maybe Ben had it loose, like in a generic case, loose disc, no manual, but I didn't want to buy it that way, so twice I passed up on it, once when it wasn't complete and once when it was disc only. So finally, I found a seller who had it in the condition I wanted. Now, as for the Ben 10 series, I'm going to be honest, I don't know anything about it other than it was on Cartoon Network, but I do know they made a sequel for Wii U, and that's much harder to find than the first one, so I ended up getting this one from an Amazon seller who had it for 25 bucks, and they said it was complete and working, and there weren't pictures of it, so I had to just take their word for it. But once I popped it in the Wii U, it definitely was not working. It was complete, but the manual, the case were pretty rough, and then when I took a closer look at this disc when it said it couldn't be read, there was paint scratched off the top. That's usually a bad sign because the data is right underneath the paint. So if somebody scratched all the way through the paint, data has been lost. And I ended up returning the disc as defective, and Amazon gave me a full refund. I tried cleaning it several times with a microfiber cloth, but lost data is lost data. You can't recover it by wiping off some smudges and some dirt. It's just gone. And this game, I didn't expect to have a hefty update, but it is what it is. Funky Barn is another one of those that's a little hard to find, but once I found an eBay seller that had it complete, I definitely took them up on the offer because I was just tired of looking for it in the wild. Some Wii U games you just don't find out while you're browsing around for stuff, and that's definitely one of them. Now, this game only came out on two platforms that I know of, the 3DS and the Wii U, and it's been called the Harvest Moon of the Wii U because it's apparently the closest thing that this console ever got to a physical game that has the same farming elements. I guess Harvest Moon is now Story of Seasons because the publisher has taken the intellectual property, so the original developers changed the name and continued the series under their own name, Story of Seasons, but neither of those things are Funky Barn. Funky Barn is just Funky Barn, and the game has some funky ratings if you look at it on places like Metacritic. It averages about 50%, which means it's definitely not the bottom of the barn. It's not down there in the pile of what's it that all the farm critters have made, and the farmer has shoveled into a big heap that stinks and flies circle around it, but it's definitely not a great game. And I think just from watching these cutscenes, I can tell it's pretty high on the cheese factor, even if you don't milk any cows. It seems like they're going on some sort of mad scientific experiment here, and it's taking the farm in a whole new direction that the poor farmer doesn't like. But enough of the plot, let's move on to the next game. The next game I tested had an even longer update than Funky Barn. This one took about 7 minutes in total, so buyer be warned, you might want to get ready for a long wait when you're putting Kung Fu Panda in for the first time. And this is the same game that if you saw a previous mail call, the seller used very flimsy packaging. It was crushed on the back and torn in a couple of places. And to my surprise, the seller was pretty belligerent about it when I said, well, your shipping method contributed to some damage to this game. And he's like, you're paying for a working game, not the game in the case and the condition. I actually sold it to you for less than what I would sell a good condition game in. And I thought, no, now you're just full of it, because I checked this on price charting before I bought it, and I paid above the price charting average based on the fact that you had a photo of it complete with the box manual disc. So you're full of it. I didn't say that, of course. I kept it polite, but then he said, my shipping methods have saved me $15,000 a year, so no, it's not worth the extra 25 cents for a padded envelope, but I will give you a couple dollars back. Okay, at that point, I just threw my hands up in the air and said, whatever, dude, give me the $2. I mean, I'll take it in the condition it's in, but it's still not worth what I paid for it that, but I didn't say that part. It's just like, if I ever find a better copy of Kung Fu Panda in the wild, I will probably upgrade this one, but for now, this will have to do. It's just a shame when sellers use flimsy packaging and then blame you instead of blaming themselves for not packing it well enough to survive the trip through the postal system. It's something you should at least put in a padded envelope and maybe put some cardboard around it, or if you don't put it in a padded envelope, put some bubble wrap and some cardboard around it before you put it in an envelope. Like, just take a little extra time, a few extra cents, and then it saves aggravated buyers who are unhappy with the condition that their items arrive in. I'm saying this as not just a buyer, but as a seller as well, because I've sold stuff on eBay and I use padded envelopes because I tried to be cheap with my shipping methods too at one point, and it came back to bite me, and I learned the hard way. So you don't like getting returns, you don't like chargebacks, then you should just spend a few extra cents on your packaging methods and charge the appropriate amount for shipping and handling. If you're honest and fair with what you charge to get it there, people will pay it. Like, some people will balk at the idea that it costs $6 or $7 to ship a t-shirt, but if they try to price it themselves at the post office, they're going to find out that a XX t-shirt and a package that it fits inside and postage to get it first class across the United States, that's what it's going to cost you. You're not really making a profit on that kind of thing. You're actually cutting it right down to the razor, and if you charged less than that, you'd actually be taking a loss. So I think people seriously underestimate the cost of shipping. So I do understand where the seller was coming from about how he saves money with his methods, but at what cost? Unhappy customers is not worth the cost. Anyway, Monster High 13 Wishes certainly didn't arrive in poor condition, although I don't understand the Monster High series. I own one other game from this called New Ghoul in School. My best guess as to the whole Monster High phenomenon is that somebody wanted to make a new Bratz or Barbie or toy line that they could sell by having a cartoon and a TV show and a associated video games and perhaps even a movie that was direct to video. So they created a bunch of girls that look like monsters and put them in high school because, yeah, we can sell toys of that. But I don't really care. I just don't. So that's it for part one. We'll be back with part two in just a little bit.